Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. Got a very intelligent human on today, Eoin Lacey. Don't let the spelling confuse you. He is just Irish, but his accent adds a little extra flavor to the podcast today, and this is actually one of my favorite podcasts I've done so far. Very intelligent guy. He's a performance consultant and the co-founder of the Irish Strength Institute. He's been through the entire gauntlet of the health, fitness, gym industry, as he talks about on the podcast, and you'll hear. But he started in a Globo gym scenario and evolved into the personal training / owning his own gym institute scenario. During this time, he continually sought education. You'll hear about his reading habits as well on here. He also learned under Charles Poliquin and traveled and simplified his information, which Charles Poliquin is one of the gods in the nutrition side of performance, one of my favorite people to read as well. But on the podcast, we talk about a lot of things. We focus heavily on MMA, strength training, nutrition, supplementation, those kind of things, but it applies to everybody because his systems that he breaks down, it breaks down his macro and micronutrients. And then we actually finish the podcast talking about the performance consulting world for just optimal performance for every human on the planet, his 5 pillars, his breakdown, and it's absolutely dynamite. Though a lot of the time is spent on the MMA world, he has trained and worked on hundreds of athletes in that world. Conor McGregor being one of the big names there. We talked briefly about him on the podcast as well. But Eoin just talks very passionately about health and fitness. Obviously, the boys get juiced up here and there on the podcast, which makes it fun. But you can see the passion and obviously hear the incredible intelligence and the simplification of a lot of information very fast. So I hope you enjoy. Eoin Lacey, thank you for joining.
No problem at all. Thank you so much. So hopefully your listeners can interpret a bit of Irish accent going on here. So I'll try and keep it nice and slow. I won't say Guinness too many times. And yeah, hopefully people can understand me.
No, I love it. I was telling you, I'm finishing up Patrick McCown's Auction Advantage course right now too. So I think I got my ears dialed. So at least I'll selfishly get something out of it. But just to introduce you to the crew and the listeners and everything, if you could run through a quick background and kind of your journey through the fitness and health industry and then kind of where you're at today.
Okay, so I feel like an elevator speech is coming along. So I classify myself as a performance consultant. So at a very young age, I decided I wanted to get involved in health and fitness and well-being. And the only real aspect was either as a football coach, a soccer coach, or a gym manager. So I was already playing football at a pretty decent level. But I went off to study fitness and leisure management, which is, running big health clubs. And I was lucky enough where I lived, there were some really big clubs. Actually, the biggest club in Ireland at the time was quite close to where I lived. So I was lucky enough to start working there. I remember I walked into the gym. This was 1996. I rocked into the gym and I said to the gym manager, I'm looking for a job. He's like, what age are you? I said, I'm 16. He says, have you done your college course yet? He says, no, I've just been accepted. He says, you can't apply for a job in a gym until you actually get qualified. But it's 3 years. I'll be qualified in 3 years. He's like, that's not the way it works. But anyway, he gave me a job. He made up a name. He called me a leisure attendant, which sounds like someone that cleans the bathrooms. But anyway, I got in at a very young age in the gyms. And then from there, for the next 6-7 years, I progressed up and I actually managed the biggest gym in Europe at the time, still the biggest gym in Ireland. So I'd sort of gone through that reign of big memberships with 10,500 members, 50-meter swim pool, 14 tennis courts, but nobody was getting fit. Nobody was getting healthy. The only person getting healthy was the manager, the owner of the gym with all these people attending. And we would do stats, Brian. People would come to the gym 1.2 times a week. Like gym people are making, like gym owners are making money from people not going than they are going. So I soon realized that wasn't for me. So I went down the physical therapy route. I went back to college to study physical therapy because I wanted to know more about histology and biochemistry and anatomy and physiology, and I loved that. Then I was introduced to Charles Poliquin. I'm sure you're familiar with Charles. Yep. So I started studying with Charles, and then we invited him over to Ireland to do some seminars. And that's when I'm a bit of a meathead. I'm a bit of a gym monkey, and I have to make things simple to understand. So when I was on these seminars with Charles, and he would explain something, then I would sort of process it and regurgitate it. And he's like, actually, that's a simpler way of saying it. So we sort of built up this rapport that he would deliver content and I would help to systemize it. And one of the things, you know, he's passed away now, but he would cover some random topics and it wasn't consistent. So he took me on board as one of his instructors to systemize his courses and help to, you know, develop the course content. And I was blessed to be able to travel the world teaching with him, alongside him initially, and then separately as part of his lead instructor. So huge benefit from that point of view. And then from that, I was always interested in nutrition. So functional medicine, when I got exposed to it in 2002, really got me going, this is different. So if you eat a potato from Ohio and I eat a potato from Ireland, there's going to be different levels of carb content, different levels of fiber. It's like, whoa, hang on a second here. There's a book called Optimum Sports Nutrition by Mikey Colgan. He talks about the concentration of the soil and how that impacts the quality of the food, which obviously makes perfect sense. But a calorie isn't necessarily a calorie. And then people taking random supplements and allergy testing and gut health and hormones, sleep and breath work and sleep apnea. My mind was just like, just so much more. So I went down that rabbit hole of function medicine. And at that point, I was still managing the gym. I decided to go off and open a gym with my friend John Connor and Stephen Ward. We opened the Irish Strength Institute. And the reason being is we opened the gym to allow us, a performance centre, to allow us to do all that we wanted to do. I had worked with the Paralympic Council of Ireland with people with cerebral palsy. I had guys in wheelchairs and missing arms and missing legs and visually impaired. And there was no textbook. There's nowhere to learn this stuff from. So when I had my own facility, I could buy different bars. Like this gym I'm in now at the moment, we have 41 different bars. Like we have 6 different safety squat bars. Why do you need, like nobody needs that. Like all the transformer bars, you name it, we have it. Why? Because some guys might have a limitation with putting a barbell in the back. One guy might only have one arm. I've got a guy at the moment who has a double lung transplant. So he can't take his arms back because the sternum has been broken so many times. So for me now, I work as I said, a performance consultant, helping people both in sport and in business just perform better, whether that be in the bedroom, maybe that's fertility, maybe that's skin health, maybe that's running faster, jumping higher, maybe that's optimizing your testosterone or your thyroid or your gut health. So no matter what you do from a performance point of view, there's always aspects. And sometimes it's me, sometimes it's like I do a lot of breath work with guys, as we spoke about, you do a lot of, or I bring somebody in. I do a lot of fascia release. I do a lot of active release techniques and dry needling, but I have an osteopath and chiro, people are referred to. So I think to get the best for your athlete or your client, you need breadth in your network. You need a support structure. And I have Doc, as we talked about, as a second opinion or to bounce ideas off. So in a nutshell, that's what I am. I'm a bit of a crazy Irish guy that tells people, as my brother, when he spoke at my wedding, he said, all you need to know about Owen is lift the weights up and down and don't eat bread. So that's my job in a summary.
That's your 8-word summary.
Yeah.
No, that's dynamite. And I think it's really cool just in the first place that you figured out that that's where you wanted to go. And that was your purpose very early. Like, how did you get plugged in? Like, how do you know that so solidly, for lack of a better word, at 16?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is like people will come into our gym was massive, as I said, 10,500 members. But people will come into the gym. Back then, people came for 2 major reasons: to have a bit of fun, to socialize, and also to get in shape. People were having fun. They weren't getting in shape. So generic programs, generic spinning classes and Zumba and whatever else, other stuff that's done out there. Not to slag off group fitness, I'm not slagging it off, but it's not specific to the individual. The stimulus, the adaptation, the hormone response, the periodization, it's not there. So, like as I say to people, when you start lifting weights, you get welts in your hands. That's a positive adaptation to lifting a barbell and dumbbell. But to the same extent, all our fingerprints are different. So training styles have to be different. Periodization has to be different. But so many people just neglected that component. And back then when I was younger, you know, Kenneth Cooper was a big lead person there when it comes to heart rate training and getting into heart rate zone. Like, heart rate training is one thing. The heart and the cardiovascular system is an engine and delivers oxygenated blood to the working muscles. So it's the demand placed in the muscles that stimulate the heart. It's not the opposite way around. So too many people focus on get my heart rate in this range and I'll get the result I'm looking for. No. And this is my point is, it has to be a different approach. So I just wasn't happy with only getting some results with some people. I needed more. I needed much more information. That's why I just constantly study, constantly learn. I was chatting to a client earlier on today. In 2 weeks time, I will have set myself a goal when I was 31 to read a book a week for the next 10 years. So in 2 weeks time, I will have read, now I said 50 books a year. I will have read 500 books. These are Audible books, not the books I normally read in the bookshelf. That's 50 books a year, every year for the last 10 years. And they're all on the very similar topics: nutrition, training, anatomy, genetics, functional medicine, business development. They're all the same thing. Why? Because when a client comes into you, listen to them, learn from them. And then if there's something you don't know, either reach out to another expert. But every plan is different. If I was to coach you, or as to coach Eric, or as to coach Robbie or Adam, it's all a different approach, because you're on a different journey. I tell people you're like a car. If I was to buy a car over in Ohio, what I'd like to know about it is how old it is, what's the fuel economy, and what's the mileage on it. What journey has that car had? When your client comes to you and an athlete comes to you, what's their mileage, what's their condition, what shape are they in? And then you need to fix where they currently are. But everyone's journey could have been off-road, could have been on a nice road, could have been on good tires, bad tires. We all have a certain mileage in our body. So it just can't be the same approach. The journey moving forward, we have to assess where you currently are and where you were.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've been, now that I'm getting into like the training world and the coaching and performance consulting as well, you start to learn that, like, well, one, you look back on my own personal journey, and like you walk into a American football strength and conditioning program or the weight room, like it is a very similar program for 100 different guys or 60 different guys. And like, obviously, like, as you can have a system that looks great on paper, but like once you put it into action or put it into the environment, like everybody's going to react differently. And you see that happen where like some guys, like I became, like, my college program was detrimental to me. Like I came in working with Dr. Toma and Dr. Serrano, and I came in really strong, lean, fast, etc. And I came into basically like an Olympic weightlifting program, and it didn't favor my genetics, my biomechanics, whatever it ends up being. So I gained or I lost lean muscle mass, slowed down, like all these things. And I didn't figure that problem out till after. So like looking back, I'm trying to do a similar pattern to you, where how much information can I take in to simplify, and then obviously have like that awareness to like coach and consult everybody one-on-one. But a lot of it ends up coming down to like teaching each specific person a level of awareness and then trying to give them as much knowledge as you can. And that's been kind of interesting to me, because I'm still like I'm a baby in the world of all the training modalities, all the recovery modalities, optimal nutrition, those kind of things. So I guess my question there is, obviously, like, I love the time involved, like the fact that you're reading a book a week and those kind of things. I think people kind of forget the ability to master one niche. Like, so obviously you're in the health world. There's a million niches in the health world, but like this law of 10,000 hours or all these books and those kind of things have obviously led you to be a great resource for obviously some of the best people in Europe, the best gyms in Europe, and those kind of things. So as far as like refining your process and being able to translate all your knowledge to we'll say like for me, I'm going to be selfish here and say, you walk into a sports team, like how are you translating that to the coach to get the best out of each player one-on-one? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And what I'd say is, I don't believe you should be an expert in loads of different fields. So, for example, off topic, I'm consulting with a company at the moment who have a big investment in the military. It's going to be tactical training and fitness training. Now, we have no knowledge on software development at all. But I read up on it so I could hold a conversation. Not that I'm going to be, so sometimes I just study these books to have a better rapport or communication with people. However, one of the things you said there, if I was to walk into a weight room with people, and I've done this, so actually I did this job with Eric over in Azerbaijan. So we looked after the Azerbaijan wrestling team. So I would go to and fro. So when I went over initially to assess what's going on, first of all, you might look at me thinking, this fella can speak Azerbaijani. I can't speak it, right? So that's a different challenge in itself. But I sometimes in the past, I would look at S&C programs and say, that's just generic. Why are they doing it like that? But in the real world, there's one or two S&C guys. They've got some, juniors coming up that are in college or undergrads helping them out. They've got a tough job. They've got a big weight room full of guys. So it's hard to be individual. However, one of the things I try to get across to the majority of people, there's only three, and you can question me on this. In my opinion, there's only three sports in the world that weight training, strength and conditioning in the weight room helps. Powerlifting, because it's a barbell orientated, Olympic lifting, and then CrossFit. Everyone else goes to the weight room to do what? To perform better at their sport. So when you went in and they forced you to do Olympic lifting and all these periodization cycles, they're making you a weightlifter, not necessarily an athlete. So everyone's leverage, everyone's biomechanics, everyone's flexibility, stability, muscle fiber orientation, genetic makeup is different. So the key thing is to develop a program that stimulates an athlete correctly with the right amount of recovery. And one of my biggest problems was when I see programs in the real world, I never see a recovery day. I see this OFF day. I'm like, well, what's that? It's an off day. It's not a recovery day. You have to stimulate recovery. Recovery has to improve. So one of the things we look at from a blood chemistry point of view is a creatine kinase and muscle breakdown. So one of the things I see with a lot of the wrestlers were a lot of muscle breakdown. Like these guys were, one, dehydrated, two, a lot of muscle breakdown. And I see no recovery. So the first week I was there, I would just go and assess them. There was 71 wrestlers would train at one time. It's a big, huge dome, females down one end. Then the freestyle in the middle, there was eight mats, and then 8 for the Greco-Roman. So, and they would flow in a different rotation when they came in with the buses. So the buses would drop the guys off, they would go in, get ready, warmed up and so on. But it was a big administration. But what would happen, guys would be finished training and be sitting in the bus waiting for the rest of the guys in the showers. It just was a shit show, excuse my language. And then we go back to what was called the GAFAS, which is the housing place where they all stayed. And it just wasn't seamless. So what I did was, my first recommendation was contrast showers. So every person, after a shower, and with the resting, there's a huge amount of lactic acid accumulation because it's heavily isometric dominant. So they would go in there, they would do 2 minutes hot, and then take the shower head off and move it around their body, 1 minute cold. They do 3 rounds, get out. Which meant everybody was only showering for 9 minutes, and they were getting that vasoconstriction and vasodilation, helping the lymphatic system, helping the cardiovascular system, and then it was more seamless. So when the guys got into the bus, then I had the masseuse make up the post-workout shakes. So it was starting to work correctly. Then the guys that were waiting the next bus, they would do some foam rolling, some stretching. So there's a system put in place. But when I look at programs, if you walk into any gym, and I would even say in the world, you walk into any gym in the world and there's guys doing the trigger point work and the foam rolling and the activations, those guys were injured. It's the gobshites, the fools that come in and jump onto a chin-up bar with no warm-up. The guys that put 3 plates aside without warming up. So for me, I build it in. So for me, it was about structuring a program that had recovery involved in it, but the S&C was complementary to that person, that it wasn't just always the same. And I would always, and I came up with a system for the coaches over there, A, B, and C approach. A was, this person can do anything. Absolutely anything they can do it. B, they had some bilateral issues. They could do bilateral exercises, but you needed to build them up a bit more to get into the A group. And the C group was conditioning or corrective. They weren't there yet. They're either coming back from an injury or they damaged themselves in the game. And they could move through the categories depending on their abilities. But not everyone can lift the same. And you know yourself, you're in a room with a load of guys, testosterone is flying, risk of injury is higher. And in my opinion, people shouldn't get injured in the weight room. You can get injured in a cage. And I've had that many times with all my fighters, on the mat, on the pitch, on the court. But in the weight room, they shouldn't be getting injured. And I tell people, your performance in the weight room, apart from those other sports I mentioned, doesn't mean anything. I've been in the weight room with guys that can outlift. I get on the jiu-jitsu mat with them and they beat the living shit out of me. So the transfer of strength training, I think, has to be looked upon. The recovery, the adaptability and the periodization between the A, B, and C method, I feel if coaches embrace it a bit more, would be better. Rather than working on long-term periodization, work on shorter cycles, find out the type of programs you're trying to adapt to, and then develop it from there.
No, I love that. And I think that's a pretty good coverall too, because it, again, like, and because you see guys that do get hurt in the weight room and those kind of things. And honestly, like in professional sports here in the States, like that gets the coach fired pretty quick. There's a very short leash on that too. So the detriment of that is that a lot of the programming becomes maintenance and it doesn't force a lot of adaptation. It's prevent injury. And I've worked with a bunch of different strength coaches, obviously, and then I'm friends and have talked to a bunch of NFL strength coaches as well. And everybody, again, approaches it differently. So, and one of the biggest differences in approaches that I've seen is the warm up and the activation to obviously prevent injury in the weight room. How do you approach the warm up and getting your athletes ready to train in the weight room?
Yeah, so the few trains of thought. So for me, simply put, when someone's lifting more load, when someone's going to be doing a heavy 1RM or a 3RM or some Olympic lifting power movement, it's much more progressive. And this is one of my pet hates. If you want to lift weights, if you want to squat, for example, you have to squat to warm up. Getting on a treadmill, getting on an assault bike, yes, I understand it gets the general heart rate up, but it's not specific. So all the warm up have to be specific. So for me, most of the time when I coach an athlete, I'll find out where their inactivation is. Maybe it's glutes, maybe it's vastus medialis, maybe it's thoracic extension, maybe it's thoracic rotation, and I come up with a warm up and activation sequence, but I embed it into the warm up. So thoracic extension, hip flexor, squat. Glute activation, hip bridge, squat. So I build it in so they're actually doing a squat at the end of it. And the squat is progressively going up in load. It's the bar movement. It's the tempo that we're looking for. But it has to be embedded rather than having this warm up over here on the ground and then lifting the weights. It has to be, in my opinion, it should be blended because you're preparing the body for that movement. You're getting the synovial fluid warmed up, the connective tissue, the muscle recruitment, and then the actual nervous system has to be fired up. Going in and doing 3 sets of squats is a waste of time. You're not warmed up. So if you're doing 5 by 5, let's just say, you need at least 5 sets to warm up, if not even 8 sets to warm up. And for the guys lifting heavier loads, it could be even higher. I'm not saying you have to do 7 sets of 5. It could be 7 sets of 2. Progressively building up, but each athlete is a little bit different. So all my warm-ups, they be warm-ups, mobility, activation, and lifting. It has to be, the body needs to know, okay, I'm getting firing my glutes. So we've done this, and this active release techniques, I've done this for years. I could get you on a table and test your Thomas test or test your glute activation, and then stand you on the ground. Completely different environment. Muscles don't activate the same way on a massage table as they do on a platform. Mike Tyson has that great quote, everyone has a plan that they get punched in the face. Your squat technique might be great at 100 kilos, but then it goes to shit at 200 kilos. So you have to warm the body up. And my activation is switch on the muscle, get the joint involved, get the tissues involved, but always link it to the movement in that sequence.
I got you. So majority of the time you're going to have them on their feet as they're getting towards the squat. Like it's not going to be, yeah, no, I love that. Just, because obviously like you fall into the world of like foam rolling, trigger pointing. It all does serve a purpose, but at the end of the day, cause I'm a believer, just, cause I've had ankle injuries and turf toe and all those things. And I found out really quick the importance of input from the feet, the control and strength of the feet and mobility of the ankles. I was lucky enough to learn that through trial and error in college and through Dr. Serrano and Dr. Toma's tutelage. But that's something where now, because you see all these specialist strength coaches where guys go to in the off seasons and pay X amount of money to go to them. But like a general theme that I've seen is, one, when they are getting getting ready to run, which obviously they're doing on their feet, or getting ready to squat or deadlift and train, some guys start inside out, where they start like psoas and glute activation, kind of the Douglas heel methodology. And then other guys start barefoot. And that's where I've seen the better trainers, or at least from my experience and feel when I do their workouts, show up. Do you follow a similar pattern as far as activation?
Yeah, well, this is the thing for me. Like, one of the things that I try to get across to people, like if someone has a trigger point, for example, if I find a trigger point in your calves, your tibialis, or your QL, or whatever it is, I'm not going to be treating that before weight training session. And sometimes people get on that rehab tour where they're foam rolling to death, they're doing, you know, massage guns, they're doing all this stuff before they lift. For me, when I warm you up, I'm warming you up to perform better at the training session. If I see nodules or trigger point stuff, that's a separate session. That's a separate, you know, self-care, myofascial release stuff that you do afterwards. But for me, the Douglas Heel stuff, I think there's some good merit in some of the stuff he teaches. I know Carl Dietz is big on different mechanics with the toe positions. I think that's got a lot of merit. I don't do a lot of sprint mechanics over here. Most of my guys wouldn't be in that field. But definitely I think a lot of the barefoot with training gives more receptance to the body, gives more neural feedback to the body to know where people are in space. I think that needs to be integrated for sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, I love that stuff. And then just to kind of backtrack, because I'm still I'm thoroughly impressed by the book a week concept.
Yeah.
And so obviously, like, I read like 8 books at a time. And like, cause I just kind of bop, and I have a short attention span right now. But it's kind of like I read till I'm entertained and that kind of thing. And then when that stops, I switch. Or if I'm having a conversation where I'm, again, deficient, I try and find a book or chapters there. But so there's this kind of concept where, like, you can read 1,000 books, or like you can read the 100 best books over and over again. So do you have books that you'd recommend in the strength conditioning world, mobility activation? Like, do you have like go-to books that are kind of part of your foundation?
Well, this is the thing, and when I read, again, I read a lot, I always find out the differences in a book. So if I read a nutrition book from one person to the next person, the key thing that sticks out to me is what they disagree on, rather than what they agree on. So I think one of the areas that I think people need to be more wary of when it comes to, let's say, soft tissue, right, or connective tissue, people need to understand fascia more. So the role that fascia has in the body, I think, needs to be understood more. So just understanding anatomy. So I used to use this example in seminars. Like, if you go to a hotel and you have a grapefruit, you know, let's say you have a grapefruit. Normally what they do in a grapefruit, they cut it in half and you eat it with a spoon, okay? And you're left with this looks like half an orange with all the sectors missing. That's the fascia. But if you were to eat an orange, you just peel it and eat it, and you wouldn't even notice the fascia. So a lot of times when muscles were dissected, they were dissected singly. This is the bicep origin insertion, but that's not how it actually works. So I think when it comes to anatomy, some really good books on anatomy will be Thomas Moyer's book on the anatomy trains. I'll be honest with you, I did a few of his courses. Nice guy, but there's not a lot of takeaways. He talks a lot about the electrical effect of fascia and how it needs hydration. But to be honest with you, not to put the book down, it's a good book scientifically, but the planes is all you need to know. The actual application of fascial stretching and how to manipulate it, Chris and Ann Fredericks have a book called Stretch to Win, and they do a very good job on that. And actually they teach a course, fascial stretch therapy, which I've done. I brought them to Ireland many years ago. Phenomenal, lovely people. Both of them are lovely. Chris and Ann, they teach a very good course about how to, you know, palpate and stretch people. So I think from an anatomy point of view, fascia is one area that I definitely work on. And strength training, Carl Dietz's book on triphasic, boom. He's a solid guy, very knowledgeable, and he's in the trenches. I always hear people talking about S&C, you know, from their bedroom. He's in the trenches training people. So I think a lot of his content is exceptionally good. Then I think a lot of people, they make things super advanced. Super Training is a great book. The Science of Practice Strength Training is a great book. Some of Charles' books have some really good content in it. Ian King has some good books. But for me, strength and conditioning, you need to know the people you're looking at. So one of my pet hates is, I used to teach these courses to personal trainers, and they're like, oh, I want to train athletes. And I say, well, how many athletes are you training? None, but I want to train them. Well, you cannot take S&C training and train general pop unless you fully understand what you're doing. You'll break them. Like, I remember showing people how to use accommodating resistance. And then I'd hear of 60-year-old women that can't back squat their body weight, putting chains on a bar. Like, what the hell are you doing? So for me, if you know the field you want to look at, if it's personal training, if it's females, if it's premenopausal, postmenopausal, if it's older gentlemen, if it's younger guys, if it's Gaelic guys or rugby guys or football guys, you need to study in those areas. And the best people I find, and I used to travel a lot to learn off these, is go and study with these guys. You know, understanding recruitment and nervous system and muscle fiber orientation, energy systems. That's what you need to know. And then when you understand that, that's when you can blend them together with real coaching to get real results.
Yeah. As far as like studying with them, are you referring to like go take their seminars, or like were these people receptive to have you come and like converse and learn from them?
Yeah, like I remember I went over a number of times to see Judd Logan. Judd Logan, unfortunately, passed away. Like, this is the thing. When you go to see someone like Judd, you go to see someone like Eric, the problem you have is shutting them up. When somebody knows so much and they're so passionate about it. I remember I contacted Dr. Thomas Levy. He's a world-leading expert on vitamin C. Oh my God, this guy would not stop talking. Like, I know more about vitamin C than I should know. And then, so what I do is find it, like Buddy Morris is another guy that I reached out. He's a lovely guy with loads of content that will share with you. So if you're really passionate about your job, understand the anatomy, the physiology, the biochemistry of the area you're looking for, then reach out to people that, again, they also understand it, but they're working with it day in and day out. And 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, these guys are not necessarily on Instagram or social media.
Yeah.
Because they're so busy. Like, does Eric even have an Instagram account? I don't even know. But the fact is, do you know why he doesn't? He's so busy doing what he does. And when the time he does have off, he's studying. So that's what I would suggest to young coaches out there. You don't have to necessarily know exactly who you want to deal with. So, but like, I've got guys coming into me, like menopausal women, I've got stress executives, I've got, you know, hundreds of MMA guys that we train. I've been lucky enough to coach MMA guys for years. And most of my guys that I trained at a young age, I now have their own gyms. And they have their own teams. And then now we look after their teams. But there's huge amount of MMA is, when it comes to S&C, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, they're not getting conditioned correctly.
Yeah, that's
one of the big.
This is one of the rabbit holes I did want to go down, because like MMA guys not training correctly, and then nutrition for those athletes as well. If we want to start ripping down that.
Right. So a number of years ago, as you know, I trained Conor for years. And I took Conor when he was an amateur athlete, right till he was professional, right till he was into the UFC for, I think, 3 fights. He was still under our S&C and nutrition. But I was training him one day, and this film crew followed me around. And the film crew asked me a question about, why don't you do a lot of biceps with him? Right. And I stupidly, and I'm going to do it now just because it's funny, I stupidly said, you don't want to be all show, no go. Well, it went over television all over Ireland, and that was me. Every parent that seen me was like, "Oh, there he is, all show, no go." I said, I wasn't trying to show off my bicep on telly. All I'm trying to show is that has no function. Yeah. Having big biceps in MMA is moronic, but what does everyone do on their way in? Like, they flex a double bicep pose, where if you want to put on a head and arm choke on someone, or you want to grapple with someone, you do not want big cross-sectional area of the upper arm. It's disadvantageous. The speed, reaction time, grappling, wrestling, so it doesn't help. So a lot of guys this is the thing, you can get sweaty in the gym, or you can get results in the gym. And too many people are getting in there, oh, killer workout, burn this amount of calories. Who cares? Your S&C has to be specific to what you're doing in the actual cage itself. And one of my pet hates is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here, is fitness is all specific. Fitness is muscle specific. So if me and you, let's say you can run all day, but can you box? Just because you can box doesn't mean you can grapple. Just because you can grapple doesn't mean that you can do wrestling. Just because you can wrestle doesn't mean you can do jiu-jitsu. So people are on bikes and outside running. By all means, yes, it hits a certain training heart rate zone, but the muscles involved in the actual sport are not necessarily the prime movers in the sport itself. Then if we look at contractions, in wrestling, a lot of guys, in MMA, there'll be stages where guys are up against the cage, where they're holding, they're shooting for underhooks, or they're doing a takedown defense, and it's massively isometric. But they haven't done any isometric work in the gym. They've built up lactic acid through the roof, and they don't have the lactic clearance You know, the carnitine muscle concentration to get rid of this lactate, and then they can't even throw their hands then. So they're not, one, they're not targeting, they're not fitting the right muscles. Two, they're not fitting the right type of muscle contractions. Then the problem is they're working on hypertrophy or muscle building training parameters, which have, in my opinion, no place in MMA. You either want to be fast and explosive or super fit. And when guys are able to go super hard and super fast and they're powerful, but their capacity to reproduce that is out the window, that's what they need to work on. And plyometric training is a phenomenal form of training, but jumping on a box isn't plyometric training. Plyometric training is the speed of the reaction time, the ground contact force you're looking for, and the correct amount of rest to reproduce that activity again. But that's not what's being done. And then some people will mimic strength and conditioning, MMA movements in the gym. I'm not necessarily fully against that. I can understand why you would do that. But the only true sport-specific training is doing the sport itself. If you want to wrestle, get better wrestling, you need to wrestle. You want to get better jiu-jitsu, you need to do that. But in my opinion, guys they're not focusing on the specific things. And the body is super clever. And I say this in loads of seminars. You've only got one arse, you can't sit on two horses. So don't go into the gym saying, I'm going to be a power lifter, Olympic lifter, CrossFitter, super fit. Yes, there's some CrossFit people that can do that, and by all means, you do that. But MMA guys, most of my MMA guys would do on average 14 units of training a week before they come and see me. That's 14 units. That's my time in the morning, jiu-jitsu in the evening, sometimes it's 3 a day. So you're managing volume. So when I get them into the gym, but if I was to smash them up even more, that's breaking them down. So for me, there's mainly 3 areas I focus on, is making someone that's not strong and powerful enough, stronger and more powerful. And if that's their area. Second thing I work on is working on their specific MMA fitness. And that fitness is the ability to be able to go for a 5-minute round with a 1-minute break at the highest level to maintain that power all the way through. And the last one is to minimize risk of injury. So for me, there's so many injuries in the sport. You can't stop someone getting an elbow in the face, but overtraining injuries you can do. Thoracic extension, hip mobility, ankle issues, we can definitely work on that. And actually, for any of the S&C guys out there, the UFC do have a performance institute in Vegas, and they got one in Shanghai as well, and maybe there's going to be more, but they do a report. So when I look at any athlete, I look at the needs analysis of the sport, I look at the biomechanics, I look at the muscular imbalance caused by the sport, and then I look at the common side of injury, and they do quite a lot of stats on that. So the neck, like if you're not training your neck and you're an MMA athlete, you're a moron. You're an absolute moron. Your neck is one of your insurance muscles. So you need to make sure that's super strong. Your grip, and this is not grip. And people say, oh, functional training. And they just do barbells and dumbbells. That's more functional training. Nowhere in the world do you get a 7-foot symmetrical bar or a tree, you do a chin up forward. So don't be telling me it's not functional. Anything that improves the function of the body is functional training. If something that makes you jump higher, run faster, higher endurance, higher capacity, higher power output, that to me is what we need to work on. So the majority of MMA guys that I see, don't get me wrong, they're killing it in the gym. They're smashing it. They're not watching volume, and the specificity of the program isn't, aligned to their goal. This person is strong. Like most guys in MMA, again, this is a huge generalization. Most guys in MMA are big enough for the division. They generally will have to cut quite a lot of weight for the sport. So hypertrophy training isn't complementary to what they need to do. I would either be working on power or working on capacity, working on power or working on capacity of the relevant energy system for that particular activity. And I'm blessed. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, you're good.
So my colleague that I owned the gym with, John Connor, he just completed his PhD. So John, again, he's the first, well, as far as I know, he's the first guy to get a PhD in MMA weight cutting. So all his research is on weight cutting for professional MMA athletes. Because we have so many of them, he got a massive sample size. But guys are cutting weight incorrectly. So John has come up with a system to help them do that. But the nutrition that the guys have isn't designed around their 14 units of training. So it needs to be, again, it's an individual approach to suit these people. But I've got guys, white guys, black guys, guys from all over the world, and it's all different for them. I've got guys that can have carbs all day, every day, and they're still shredded. But I don't want them too lean now. I want them around the 8 or 10% body fat. So I have a bit of a cushion to come down near a competition. And I don't want too lean, but too long. So for me, it's a whole science, and it's a relatively new sport in the world of sport events, if you want to call it that. But there's so much more that can be done. There really is.
Do you like the guys around that body fat as well for brain health, as far as like keeping fat in the body?
Yeah, I'm staying super lean is not advantageous at all. And I was lucky. I am for a while over here. You're obviously familiar with rugby.
Yep.
So one of the biggest organizations, the IRFU, and we got guys playing for Ireland and Leinster. And what would happen is they would come to see me secretly, because in their club they would have a nutritionist and an S&C guy and a sports medicine guy, but it was just general advice. So I was like their dirty little, like their girlfriend or whatever it is. They come and see me on the side and I help them out. But the problem is, and they found that when body fat was going too low, that there were impact. Like if you look up body fat in a textbook, it says it insulates your body and it's a shock absorber. So I know that's very basic, but guys were getting injured more when the leaner they were, and they were too anal on their nutrition. So I like rugby guys to be higher, MMA guys 8 to 12% away from fights, and I like them to be around 110% of fight weight. So someone who fights at 84 kilos, they can walk around 93 or 92 kilos. I don't want too much of a spread to bring them down. But if they're too fat, it's not advantageous. Body fat, like unless you're DC or somebody a heavyweight, it doesn't help in performance majority of time. I'm not necessarily out there for them to have six packs. Well, what I'm doing is carrying excess body fat in the majority of times isn't advantageous to cardiovascular health, recovery, contraction speed, and so on.
No, yeah, obviously DC is I'd say an outlier in that world.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess just to transition to nutrition a little more closely, like as you're assessing a new athlete or a current athlete, obviously it's like the road's always under construction in that world because you're always adapt and trying to improve. But as far as like an MMA athlete and that like capacity, what do you kind of introduce first, or what do you assess first in the nutrition world with them? Because so just to tailor it to other sports as well, just because as same as those rugby guys have come and seen you, I've been relatively unimpressed with the nutritionists and stuff in pro football, because again, a lot of it's kind of like the weight room effect, where like you can't get them hurt in the weight room, and they can't like obviously have you pop for any supplement, and then they can't put you on like a crazy carnivore diet or anything like that. Like legit, we get presentations in professional football with a plate that says cut your protein and carbs and vegetables into thirds, like pretty elementary. So I guess as far as like we'll start with the MMA world, how you assess nutrition. Is it blood work? Is it just like them journaling their current diet and then adapting it, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, so the first thing I do with any athlete, and this goes across any sport, I will never make a recommendation on food unless I see what they currently are eating. So unless you come to see me with at least a 3-day, it doesn't have to be in depth. It could just be the last 3 days, list down what you've eaten, and maybe even give athletes time to do that. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the frequency of eating. I'm looking for the eating window. I'm looking for the quality of food that they're having. I look at obviously the fat content, the protein content, the carb content, where it's coming from, and the fluids coming in. Only then do I build on that, because a lot of guys have no recommendations, have no structure. And when I see 3 days of a diet plan, I can start to ask questions. Well, why did you not have breakfast this day? Oh, well, we do jiu-jitsu that day. Or I don't want my belly full of food on this day. But some guys, what I see these reoccurring meals. They do the same meals time and time again. Chicken, turkey, chicken, turkey, chicken, turkey. You know, there's some red meat out there, my friend.
Yeah, trash. Yeah.
What's going on? So when I look, I know then these guys are going to be carnitine deficient. I know these guys are going to be, iron and B12 and B9 deficient. So what I look at is a 3-day food diet initially to start off. Then I give them a window of eating, as in when I want them to start eating and stop eating. Not to, again, I'm not slagging off MMA guys. However, I have found out a lot of them will smoke weed on a regular basis. I'm not saying any guys I do, but anyway.
Yeah.
What happens is then they overconsume on calories at night time with the munchies.
Yeah, very prevalent in pro sports in America as well.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
something that I had to be wary of, and I'm open with them. But a lot of guys, I remember once I was in the room and we would list the guys outside. So we used to do this test every Wednesday morning where the guys come in, I check their urine, have a little osmo check, see their hydration, and do their body fats. So I'm in doing one of the guys, and I hear all this kerfuffle outside. I'm like, what's going on? So lad's open the door, and he looks in. He says, "Owen, this Chris says that Ribena and popcorn are carbs. Like Ribena is a blackcurrant drink, and popcorn, pop." I'm going,
Yeah.
it is a carb. What? I never knew it was a carb. So you might say to these athletes a million times, fruit's a carb, and just goes over their head. So when I have a food plan in front of me, I educate them on that point of view. What I have found that one of the biggest issues is protein intake is low. And if protein is high, it's generally shitty whey protein bars, it's processed chicken all the time. So for me, I always start off with food first. I'm a big fan of food first, but then like I do use amino acids, MRMS. I've used those for many times with some great results. So I look at protein intake, I look at fat intake, I try to get it from food first. And I don't focus too much on calories to start off. And if they're coming up the weight cuts, I do like to have a gauge of where they are, but I always give them a plan. If you're on a plane, this is what you're eating. If you're in between fights, this is what you're eating. I tell them the honey trick. Doc has given you the honey trick before, is he? That's super effective. I've used that many times.
What you have, just for just general info in general, do you have guys do that on regular training days too, or just competition?
So it depends. It depends. So when guys that can't stomach a lot of food in the morning before the training, I will do it then. Guys doing mock fights in the gym or rehearsal fights, I will do it because sometimes nerve gets at people leading up to a fight. What I've also found is having optimal blood sugar is a very efficient way to utilize your own intramuscular stores. And if you have your liver, so I'm sure you know this, but you have two major areas where you store glycogen in the body. One in the liver and the second one's in the muscle. The liver glycogen or stored sugar in the body can be donated to the bloodstream or to help the muscle. But muscle glycogen is selfish. Muscle glycogen is like, I'm going nowhere, I'm staying here. So when you have optimal blood sugar levels going into a fight or during training, it allows you to use that liver glycogen to help the muscle cells. And if the nervous system needs a constant supply of sugar in order, when in activities, to be able to fire correctly and have that reactivity that you're looking for. So that's what I use it.
I got you. Yeah, I was just wondering. Then, so as far after you get done with the food, with athletes, how do you progress into obviously, I like the progression where it's food, now it's performance enhancing. But how do you approach like the fundamental nutrients, supplements, vitamins?
Yeah. So normally what I would generally start off with, I start off with a fish oil. Fish oil and amino acids is generally my first two go-to for the majority of guys. Second, I will go, if I know people are not eating enough greens, I'll go toward the B complex for that person in particular. Then I find a lot of guys that smoke weed will rely on smoking weed to help them sleep. So generally go towards a magnesium of some sort. The more your sport sweats, the more I go towards magnesium. Like, have you ever done jiu-jitsu before?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've done it on and off for the last couple of years.
And you put a gi on, man, how sweat that gets seriously wet. Like, I'm a sweaty animal so I might lose 2 kilos or 3 kilos. So when you have that amount of fluid loss, electrolytes and particularly magnesium are needed. So I would add in magnesium at night time. So fish oil and amino acid, then I go toward the B complex, depending on the green intake, but most of the time I do. Then I will give a zinc and magnesium at night time, and I may give a carnitine.
Yeah. Do you favor a form of magnesium, like the glycinate, or what do you favor?
I like a blend. Doc has a blend that he recommended a few lab companies, and I use that. So the tri blend of fumarate, tortrate, malate, glycinate. There's 7 different blends in the one that I like to use.
Okay, nice.
And that really helps with people with sleep. We have a flotation unit that we recommend the guys use. Epsom salt baths are another great one that we use. But for me, most of my MMA guys at the start had no money. Like, these guys are no money at all. Now they've got a bit more money. So I'll stagger the supplements in. And then generally what happens is most of them will have a sponsor before they have any money, and they'll get a sponsor from the supplement company. And that's the list I generally give them. My goal for all the guys is 110% walk around weight and 10% body fat. And the reason why I like that is they could take a fight short notice and make weight without a challenge. And I say this to them all, the fight is in the cage. It's not to get into the cage. If you have to kill yourself to make weight to fight, that's detrimental. But if you're at 110% of your fight weight, knocking that weight off is easy. And if you're lean, it's just like,
squeezing
out
a
sponge. Yeah, it comes out really easy. Like we used to do weight cuts with the wrestlers. I had one guy, like we did 9.1 kilos off him in an hour and a half of saunas. It can be done. Once someone's got a bit of muscle mass on them, once they're hydrated correctly and got good glycogen, bring that down. It's very, and not that people like to do water loading. You've heard this before, where you go 4 or 5 days of 8 to 10 liters, and then one day no liter, and you urinate more out. I don't like that for many reasons. It really throws off the sodium potassium balance. It really interferes with the kidneys and the adrenal glands. Not that people like it and they've done it before, but I'd rather somebody was uncomfortable for the shortest amount of time possible. And so if you wanted to cut your weight, I could do it with you in 2 or 3 hours, make your weight in and you're back again, rather than 5 days of feeling like shit, and how it messes up the nervous system, the sleep and training and so on.
Yeah, just it makes logical sense. And then because I've never I'm actually gonna start cutting for the first time, or losing weight in general for the first time starting on Monday. I've always had to gain weight or be a specific body fat for that weight, but I've never not been out of my way. I've never had to cut weight. So in general, it's been fun for me to learn about the weight cutting process, because I've been doing powerlifting for the last year, just to get an experience and compete a little bit. And so you see those guys cut, and most of them do, they pull the sodium. A couple of them are bodybuilders too, so they're getting ready for shows. That's been a learning experience. And then I've been around some MMA guys here, so I've picked their brain. Matt Brown and Lance Palmer train with Dustin Myers here at the gym I train at. So it's been cool to see how they do it. But again, there's some of it is a lock process, and some of it I'll get it done, and they do kill themselves in some sort to get it. So the logic of that, but it just, I guess it's probably more them battling their own demons and discomfort to stay at 110%. Because I'm thinking through some of the weight classes that, because I hear guys cutting 15 to 20 pounds in general for their fights, but in relation, I guess that is not too far off from 110%. So it just the whole. So what do you think is that little quick 2 to 3 hour window is the healthiest way to cut, without doing
You see, this is the unfortunate thing. So the healthiest way, weight cuts aren't healthy. Let's be honest. So I'm not going to say it's the healthiest, but I've done saunas, I've done salt baths, I've done running, I've done calorie depletion and water loading. I've done all the different methods, and certain people respond differently. So I've got some guys that love saunas. Then I used to buy the little tent saunas where the head sticks out of them. Some of the guys love that because they don't like the normal saunas. Then all my gyms have fire infrared saunas, which are much more tolerable than the stone sauna. So it will all depend. Then I have sauna blankets, and then I take guys out and wrap them in towels and so on. So it's going to be different for different people. But what I'd say is, and see this, if I say to you 110% of your fight weight, you know what that is straight away, don't you?
Yeah.
And every fighter does. Every fighter knows. So I'll be honest with you, most of the guys aren't always at that, but they're not too far away from it. So you have to give them a gauge. And we've a little, and this is only my anecdotal experience. I've been taking body fats for 20 odd years, and what I've never found, and I'm sure there's guys out there, and I'm sure there's girls out there that fall out of this category, but I've never seen somebody that has abs and has quad separation and definition that's not underneath 10% body fat. So what I say to somebody is, you can see your abs and you can see your quads, you're generally around 10% body fat. You can see one or the other, you're not there yet. Some guys, and Conor McGregor being one of those, Conor had abs on him, even if he was at 12 or 13% body fat. We didn't have quad separation. Same with Cottle Pendleton, another UFC guy I trained. He would have abs. He just had big chunky abs. He was a big rugby guy beforehand, but he didn't have it until his quads. Until he got below 10%, couldn't see his quad separation. So by giving the athlete a little bit of a barometer of assessing where they are, they know what's going on. So for me, I like to have that. No, they're probably walking on 120%, and they in the back of their mind, they know that's one more stint in the sauna or one more run the night before or whatever it may be. But as long as they're not too far off, it is the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm one day away from Coach Owen's one day of weight cutting, basically. Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Just out of curiosity, as far as like Conor's mindset, to like, was he like pretty disciplined and like and reactive and coachable to the all the concepts you were giving him?
So Conor is a unique character on many different levels. Conor would come into a training session, not being funny, probably the last guy, probably the last to turn up for the training session. So there'd be a group of the pro team that would come in. He would always be late. He always trained hard. He always had his boxing unique style was always there. He hit like a powerhouse. And if you ever look at his dimensions, his wingspan, he's got very good lever. He always trained really hard, but he would come and go and come and go. And this is documented. I'm not speaking out of school here. There was a time where he was mad. He was focused really on it, and then he broke away from it for a while, and then he got into it. But his mindset has always been relentlessly focused. He's diligent about what he's done. Like, he'd come into the gym, his runners would match, his shorts would match, his top would match. Like, everything was like, boom, it's blue or white or blue, whatever it was. Where other guys would come in with a fucking polar neck on and rugby shorts and odd socks. He was very meticulous about his whole experience, about his training. He would generally be late with time, but he always trained hard. He was always super focused. One of the things that doesn't get a lot of attention, and not a lot of people from the outside would say, so there's a guy called Gunnar Nelson. He's also a UFC guy. He's based in Iceland, in Reykjavik in Iceland. And Conor and him got on very well. And they used to do camps where the guys would go over to Iceland on a regular basis. He had a big influence in Conor, focusing and being a bit more mindful about his approach. So that was a big impact. I think a lot of people don't recognize.
Yeah, I think so, because I do have a follow-up question there, because do you follow American football at all?
Not that much. I wouldn't know much about it, to be honest.
Yeah, no. Do you know who Adrian Peterson is?
No.
So he's a all-star, multiple-time all-star Pro Bowl running back. He's a freak. I trained with him for a couple years down in Houston. He owns a gym, Athletic, down there, which is phenomenal. But so I see some parallels there. Like, he wasn't always the on-time guy, but when like he showed up, he may be that guy that hops under 315 without warming up or anything like that. But like, he has the ability to mentally lock in, go and compete like at the drop of a hat. And if there's a parallel there, but like the one separator that I've seen in the great, like the good from the great NFL stars and those kind of things, is a hyper level of competitiveness. And like, it doesn't always show up in their habits and their routines or timeliness or anything like that. But like, when like that mask goes on, that I'm like competing, I'm an athlete, I'm training, whatever it ends up being, whether like, cause like in sports, there's a lot of like walkthrough mental reps and those kind of things. And those guys don't take plays off. They're still going 100%. If it's a race, like they're winning, like that's the mindset I've seen show up. And I just like hearing about guys, because obviously McGregor was in the spotlight for and still in the spotlight for a super long time. And you hear the bravado and those kind of things, but I like the idea of matching cross sport mindsets to that, and it sounds similar.
And you know what? Like, at the very start of Conor's career, he was always outspoken and very opinionated, very vocal about stuff. But I'll be honest, he is a solid guy. I've never had a problem coaching him. He never had an issue. Like, he was always very coachable, always open minded. He always put a 100% in. So a lot of times people hear him talking a bit of smack, but that's not that he puts that on for the media. Maybe he does to a certain degree, but he, like, before the Cowboy fight, I helped him out with some bloods and consultations down in his house. It was right around Christmas time, I think it was. And I was in his house, like, very humble guy, very open, very relaxed, very welcoming. So he's not what you see on the media.
Yeah. Sex sells, like the chirping sells and like all that stuff. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. And because like that's kind of a nuance of that sport. And because like you even see in guys in the NFL, like the most outspoken ones, like the cameras, like they'll have 10 cameras around them, because they're going to say something, you get a headline, or you generate hype for the game, which is money for the teams and the sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So I get that side of thing. As far as obviously you've progressed through, I mean, we've talked through basically your whole progression. You're starting out through the MMA and then now the consulting world. If you can kind of touch on, I guess, like the general mindset and message that you give to these businesses and organizations and really just these humans on optimal performance.
Yeah, so like I do a huge amount of corporate wellness talks. I do a lot of. I'm recruited to a company in Ireland that I work with on a weekly basis. But see, question for you. One of the things I say to people: if let's say you're sitting in a room of accountants or investment bankers or engineers or architects, they've worked really hard to get there. But somehow people feel that they've earned the right to be healthy without doing the work.
Yeah.
So every day you get up, and whether you decide to eat or you don't decide to eat, that's a decision. Every time you get out of bed and the alarm goes off or hit the snooze button, that's a decision. And unfortunately, and this is not from me, this is from Napoleon Hill, people drift through life and then give out where they end up. You can't. If you're sitting on a couch and you're 20 pounds or 40 pounds overweight, you're fatigued, your skin is in bits, your digestion is problematic, you're not happy with your mood, your energy, your focus, your study, that's your decision. It's an accumulation of all the decisions you make. So well-being and workplace performance, or whether it be performance on your sport, it's the accumulation of decisions that you make. So you have to take onus, you have to take responsibility for your decisions. But for me, I talk about the bank account lodgements, the 5 bank account lodgements that you can make. There's only 5 things I believe that you can do to make lodgements into your health bank account. Number 1 is macronutrients. You need to eat macronutrients, otherwise you will die. Second of all, and this is why it really pisses me off. We hear about macronutrients all day, every day, if it fits your macros. We had Dr. Lane Norton over in the gym a number of years ago, and all the guys loved him. And he talks about if it fits your macros. And I'm involved in the same organization, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, that he is. So I asked him these questions, and every question he answered was, "It depends." And that's what happens in real life. It does depend, but when you're doing a social media post, it fits your macros. Anyway, number 1, health bank account lodgement. You have to have the right amount of macronutrients for you. And I have a little way of remembering that. It's an ABC method. As you can imagine, Brian, I try to keep things simple. Yeah. Adequate protein. What is adequate protein for you? For me, it's going to be different. Your hydrochloric acid, your pancreatic function, your muscle mass, your activity, it's going to be different. B stands for balance your fat intake. Too many people have shitty fat coming into the body. They need better, higher quality fats. So we balance their fats. And C is we control and cycle carbohydrates. In my opinion, the majority of people eat too much carbohydrates in general, not always. But once you control them and you cycle them around the right times with training and activities, they're a very healthy food source. Second thing there is micronutrients. For some reason, people think that they don't need to think about micronutrients. Every diet ever studied that was on a calorie deficit was on a micronutrient deficient diet. You take any diet that's ever researched out there, and I challenge people out there to do it. Look at the research out there and they go, "Oh, we'll cut it by 500 calories or 900 calories. That diet that you've reduced down, i.e. you've reduced the macronutrients, now is a micronutrient deficient diet. So unless you're supplementing or you're getting it in, you're not giving the body what it needs. And your enzymes and your cofactors and your hormones all need these to work. So macronutrients don't do enough on their own. They need micronutrients. And if you ask the question why and who did that, if you ask Eric, I know what the answer would be: God. God was clever. He knew what to do,
Yeah.
So we have our right macronutrients. We have our right micronutrients. The next thing there is air quality, air concentration, breathing into the body. We need the right amount of oxygen to the body. Otherwise, you will die. Yep. You only need to get a rear naked choke put on you for 3 seconds to realize I need some motherfucking air. Otherwise, I'm out, right? So people don't. And what I say to people is they don't breathe right. Their mouth is open when they sleep. They're snoring. Their posture is terrible. They don't even know where the diaphragm is. But what I say to people is the best place in the world to fix your air quality is your bedroom. So don't have a carpet in your bedroom. Maybe get a filter there, get a HEPA filter in there, work on your mouth taping, work on your nasal, breathing mechanics, do your meditation at night time. But that can really unleash. It's like if you put your phone on charge at night and every time you woke up, it's at 30% again. First thing you do is get a new charger. Second thing you do is get a new phone. But everybody's waking up at 30% and feeling like it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. You need to do something about it. So for me, breathing mechanics, breathing positions, flipping the bed, getting a new mattress, darkening out the room. They're simple things. We spend nearly a third of our life in our bedroom, and we're in complete control of that. We're not, and I see people, particularly in London, and not so much in Ireland, but in London, cycling and running to work in rush hour traffic. Are you an absolute moron? Do you wash your dishes in dirty water? Why are you breathing in pollution when you go running? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, if you ever got on a treadmill with a car beside you, would you do it? No, you wouldn't. It defies logic. And I ask these people, what's the main fuel source when you're doing aerobic exercise? Fat and oxygen. Really? You're carnitine deficient, you're B12 deficient, and you're iron, you got anemia, and you think you're going to be burning fat correctly? No, right? And then I ask women all the time, where's your red meat coming from? I don't eat red meat, it sits in my belly. I can appreciate that. But if you don't have carnitine, and red meat is one of the biggest sources of carnitine, you'll also get it from avocados. Carnitine acts as a carnitine coach. So there's two enzymes inside your cell, carnitine acyl transferase 1 and carnitine acyl transferase 2, that bring it inside the mitochondria to be burned. If you can't put the fire inside if you can't put the log inside the fire, you can't burn it. If you don't have oxygen, you can't have the fire. So these people think they're trying to optimize their health, but they're not. They're breaking themselves down with increased oxidative stress and so on. Macronutrients, micronutrients, breathing quality and air. Next one there we have is water. If you do not drink water, you will die. I didn't make the rules up. God did. Blame him. But people don't even drink enough water. So don't come to me saying, oh, what supplement can I take? And what amino acids? You don't even drink enough water. So these are simple things that we need to do. And the last thing there is sunlight. We need sunlight and sleep. I put those two together. Sunlight and sleep as the last S. Otherwise, you're going to die. And sleep for people is a huge issue. They don't get out into the sunlight in the morning. They don't get quality deep sleep at night time. But if we have these 5 things, and I've said this to Eric before, and I'm going to put my hand up. I'm a Catholic. I was born and reared and dragged up in Ireland. A lot of people are religious. I've stepped away from religion because it was forced down my throat at a young age. But I do think spirituality, religion, some sort of belief in that system will also help. I'm not taking that out. I'm saying that's for different people.
Yeah, you're not the center of the universe as long as you believe in like something bigger than yourself. Like I think that's good for the soul, and then like it takes away the egotistical, self-centered nature, which I think evil stems from. But yeah, so we're similar pages. Yeah.
So when I talk to executives, what I say to them is, you need to deserve where you are in life. You can't give out with the results for the work you didn't put in. So when people are in work, you need to perform better. And I ask them all the time, how do you rate your fitness out of 5? 5 being full of beans, full of energy, super fit. Where are you now? And the biggest response I get is 3. That's 60%. That's not good enough. If you were to, you have the capacity of feeling good. Imagine waking up, and I say this to people, imagine you woke up every single day feeling, oh man, I feel great, pumped, ready to go, energetic.
Let's ride, yeah.
Let's do this. Every day, I'm going to smash today. Imagine how that feels. Well, what do you need to do to feel like that? Well, I shouldn't drink so much wine. I should go to bed on time. We should exercise. Really? No. Yeah. Really? Then do it. Stop talking it and do it. So people need to take action. And you are 100% responsible for where you are in life, for the decisions that you make. Now, again, with disease and cancers and stuff like that, that's different more. But for your health and well-being, take control, take onus. You have a massive amount of control in this. And there's a really great researcher called Dr. Robert Sapolsky. He wrote Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers and the stress. He's a big researcher on stress. But one of the things that he's done, he's pioneered this research on mice. And he put mice in different cages. And one cage, the mice could run whenever they want. On the other side of the lab, the mice had to run when these mice ran. And because these guys had it free and easy, they did a job in the morning, relaxed, did a job at night time, because these guys didn't know when it was happening, their hormonal profile, their body fat, everything was exactly the same, bar that these guys had a choice and these guys didn't. Because in life, with COVID and all this stuff, the control was taken away from us. And that really stressed people out. But whether you have your breakfast or you don't, that's your choice. Whether you go for a run or don't go for a run, that's your choice. Whether you go to bed on time or not on time, that's your choice. So control what you can control the controllables, and then be fit and resilient and strong enough that when shit comes your way, you can say, man, I can dodge and weave this because I have the ability. And I say to my son all the time, he's 21, what can go wrong in this situation? He's like, what are you talking about? What could go wrong? But if you anticipate what can go wrong, you can respond to it. But if you haven't expected it to come your way, that's when you make rash decisions, in the moment decisions. And I was trying to we're talking about sex like with girls, so you know. So what I'm trying to get across is be prepared for, you know, situations that happen, and you have to be prepared for these things. But thinking, oh Jesus, that's when bad decisions get made, you know. So I was a very young father. That's what I'm trying to get across from. But you know what you can do.
No, I absolutely love all that, because like I rant and speak and try and give advice to people that are asking in that general health, fitness, nutrition, life aspect. And it always, like, honestly, it always comes back to like consciousness. Like, how many of your decisions are you conscious of? Like how much of your life is mindful and mindless? Like, why are you watching this TV show? That's mindless. You're being entertained. Like, you're a consumer, not a producer. And then I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. I talk about him here all the time.
Yeah.
But like if you truly want a meaningful life, which like I think everybody that has meaning and a purpose lives a lot better life. But like if you want to have a meaningful life, everything's important. Like the more you can attach meaning to your breakfast, your habits, the sunlight, the diet, like, and like a lot of it's self-education and like some of it's discomfort and actually doing it. But like if you really want a meaningful life, like everything's important. So these 5 things, obviously the foundation and these basic feel good things should be massively important. There should be the most meaning on there. But like now, like if you're progressing as an architect or a professional athlete, and then now like obviously everything in your field you should be incredibly capable of. And then I'm a big proponent of having expanded capability. And I call it like the violence and peace spectrum. Like I want to be capable of great violence. So when shit hits the fan, like if I got to protect myself, my family, my body, my things, like those kind of things, I'm going to be capable and ready. And like, and then as far as peace, like stress, distraction, those things, like the more that I can control my state, which I teach and coach and do via my breath primarily, or my focus or my thought and perspective on philosophy. Now, like this is the more capability, the calmer, more controlled, and really confidence, I think, stems from capability. So if I can be those things, like, yeah, let's wake up. And if I can have energy and be capable, like, let's fucking ride. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And one of the pet hates that I have when I talk to these executives is they wait till something goes wrong before they change their life. They stroke out. They have erectile dysfunction. They mood swings. They get marriage breakups. And because they haven't listened. If you listen, the body will tell you what's going on. You need to take action about. And there's a great book by Dr. Raj Ranganathan, and the book is called "If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy?" You know, take control. These 5 things are not rocket science. I haven't talked about grammage or, you know, supplements or genetic testing or, you know, it's just simple things you need to do every single day to get where you need to be. And I fully believe that if you have that warrior inside you, but you have it controlled, it's much better than, you know, being that weak person, having that fitness, having that resilience. It will cross over into everything, into relationships, into parenthood, into friendship, into business. And even when I talk to coaches are focused on reps and sets and tempo. How do you speak to your client? How do you speak to your athlete? How do you coach them? How do you support them? How do you it's a whole thing. And don't wait till your business is, you know, on its knees and you're in debt before you reach out. So why don't I get a business coach? Why don't I get a marketing guy? Let me help yourself out. If my car broke down, I'm not that way inclined to roll underneath it and start fixing it. I'm going to get a mechanic. My tooth falls out, I'm going to go to a dentist. I don't understand the difference, you know?
Yeah, the best time to fix the roof is when the sun's shining, you know? I think that's I think that's JFK said that, but you see that in sports massively. Like guys wait till they get hurt to start solving problems. And then like, even if you look at the system long-term, like, is this a 6-week problem that like, because I started hitting this part of my foot or my hamstring was tight, so I started compensating or whatever? Is it a 6-week program, or is it a 6-year program because you never learn how to squat or learn how to maintain your glutes or whatever it ends up being, or your feet? So that's where like I think the emphasis on the foundation obviously, like we talked about it, as you like start working with your athletes, and then obviously in just general life living, like your foundation, these 5 points, I think summarize it phenomenally. I always approach it like sun, sleep, no stress is like the first step to hormonal balance. Obviously, and then just like people don't understand like the light dark cycles usually, and I've talked about that a bunch on here with Dr. Toma and some other guys. But no, dude, you murdered that. That was awesome. That's a great way to wrap up the podcast. I massively appreciate your time.
No problem at all, Brian. It was a pleasure to chat to you, and I hope the listeners got some usable content. And now they're all fluent in Irish. They can go to any Irish bar and they can go right in, no problem.
Yeah, we'll do a social Irish term podcast in the future. At least prep me for when I come there in August.
Oh, no problem at all. Anytime.
No, you're the man. I appreciate it, and be well.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Hope you're getting a lot out of it, a lot of value, or at least some entertainment. But if you are enjoying and getting value out, please don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and review on all audio platforms, and then subscribe on YouTube. All of it would be greatly appreciated. All the support is massive. So thank you, and be well.